Yeah, these wide receivers are falling like rocks, and honestly, I'm going to have to take a big L in this video, which I'm not too excited about. But starting off with our first guy, Jalen Hyatt, we knew this guy was overrated, right? I mean, going back to drafts a month ago, this was a wide receiver that was going at pick 151. Now he's going at 194. I mean, the reason we knew Jalen Hyatt wasn't a void is just because if you looked at our prospect model at the wide receiver position in particular, I mean, since 2014, he only really comped to bust. I mean, Sterling Shepard at 23 was, I guess, a hit, if you want to call him that. But outside of there, you have a Jalen Tolbert, who obviously is nothing. Cody Lattimore, Dwayne Eskridge, Kadarius Toney. Maybe Toney could still be something. I'm writing off Toney as a bust at this point. But now you're getting a report coming out of New York saying that Jalen Hyatt is working with the third team. Now, I will give Hyatt a little bit of credit here at this new ADP where he's fallen from 151 to 194. He's an interesting round 17 dart throw, right? I mean, because if we are going to be realistic about this, the players that he is going next to, they're all bad, okay? You're not having to pass up on anybody that you're that excited to go ahead and take Jalen Hyatt. And while you have a ton of wide receivers in New York, we're about to talk about my guy in just 1 second, Hyatt really stands alone as kind of the only boundary guy, right? I mean, it doesn't matter what New York Giants pass catcher you're looking at. They're pretty much all players that operate over the middle, close to the line of scrimmage. Like if you're going to go to, say, Wandel Robinson, our next player. Well, we'll talk about him in a second, but let's keep with Jalen Hyatt. But Wandel Robinson profiles to be, I mean, hopefully a slot wide receiver. Then you have Paris Campbell, most likely a slot wide receiver. You have Sterling Shepard, most likely a slot wide receiver. And then you have Darren Waller, who operates over the middle of the football field. So to be fair to Jalen Hyatt, it's easy to see how he would fit with this Giants team as a boundary player that has speed that can actually stretch NFL defenses and possibly create space underneath for these other guys. Now, in reality, are you ever going to draft Jalen Hyatt in like your casual redraft league? No. I mean, if you're like drafting in a casual redraft league on ESPN, Yahoo, please do not waste a roster spot on Jalen Hyatt. You'd be drafting him hoping that he would turn into like a wide receiver 3 in fantasy as a rookie. Now, on Underdog, obviously, if you're getting him as like your wide receiver 7, wide receiver 8, and he could provide you a couple random spike weeks at the end of the year and turn out to be a wide receiver 3 on the season, I mean, he could be a massive hit, right? Just because I didn't like him as a rookie doesn't mean he has no shot. I mean, like I said, later in this video, you're going to see how stupid I am. I think it just depends on what you're looking at. I mean, new ADP for Hyatt, I'm fine if you want to take him in round 17, round 18 in Underdog. Don't waste your time in another draft. Now, someone that I've been drafting so freaking much as he plummets down these draft boards, Wandel Robinson. Now, we actually talked about this a couple of weeks ago, the possibility of Wandel Robinson continuing to fall because you're going to see a trend. And we talked about this a month ago. Guys that are injured, players that are going to miss the beginning of the season, or rookies tend to fall as we get closer to the start of the season in these fantasy football drafts. The reason being is when you're drafting in May, when you're drafting in June, we all want to look at these guys and just treat them as if it's an equal playing field, right? Like I love Wandel Robinson. I think he's the most talented wide receiver for the Giants. Where in reality, what begins to happen is when training camp opens up here, when people sit down and make realistic projections for these teams that next season, those guys that are injured, they never have any news. They're not on the field. If you're not on the field, you can't be looking good. And the news that you do have with Wandel Robinson, I mean, that he may start off on the PUP, this is going to make him fall in drafts. And honestly, he probably should have. I probably shouldn't have been drafting him where we were. A month ago, he had an ADP of 172, and now he has an ADP of 198 in these Underdog drafts. Now, a couple different things with Wandel that I think you could be interested in targeting. One, Wandel clearly in Underdog best ball tournaments. Like if you're looking at like Best Ball Mania, right? $25 buy-in, and then you have a $3 million first place prize. It's a $15 million prize pool, and we're trying to optimize for weeks 15, 16, and 17. There, Wandel Robinson could be healthy by the time we get to the end of the season. I think he could be a strong candidate for a potential spike week and really help you advance and possibly help you win a $3 million prize on Underdog. I actually think he could be interesting as well in your casual ESPN league if he hits the PUP and you're actually able to draft him, put him on the IR, and just have that open roster spot and essentially hold him for free. Now, of course, if you're like in your casual ESPN redraft league or casual Yahoo redraft league, and you'd have to draft him, hold him on the bench as he doesn't play at the beginning portion of the season, then there's no reason wasting that roster spot on him. But it's kind of free upside, right? If you're able to draft him and then immediately move him to the IR. So just make sure you understand your league rules and how you can take advantage of them as we get closer to the start of the season. Now, going over to a couple Indianapolis Colts wide receivers, a couple guys that I actually don't mind drafting, Michael Pittman and Josh Downs. So Michael Pittman's fallen from pick 55 to 64. Obviously, Pittman was laughably overrated a year ago. I mean, we were avoiding Michael Pittman just like Courtland Sutton. I mean, the most overrated players in fantasy last year. It was clear to see. But now you're not having to take Michael Pittman in the third round. Now in these underdog drafts, Michael Pittman is going as like a wide receiver 3. Josh Downs is now going in round 18. Josh Downs isn't even being drafted in a lot of these. Now, I like Downs as a prospect. I think he does have some upside. Of course, most likely he's nothing, right? I mean, most likely all these rookies that we're going to be talking about are going to be nothing outside of like the Jackson Smith and Jigbas, the Quentin Johnstons, the Jordan Addison, the Zay Flowers of the world. But nonetheless, I think Downs actually has upside at his current price point, which is free. We just have to commit a roster spot to him. Don't do it in your casual redraft league. Makes no sense too there. And Michael Pittman also, I think actually makes some sense if you're looking at best ball formats with where he's being drafted currently, going behind someone like Tyler Lockett. I'd probably rather have Michael Pittman over Lockett. Now, the reason I think Michael Pittman's falling is as people go through and run projections for this Indianapolis Colts offense, it's very difficult to assume that you have a lot of passing volume. Because if you're looking at Anthony Richardson as a rookie quarterback, where Las Vegas sportsbooks are telling us that the Colts are probably going to be bad this next year, Anthony Richardson's probably going to run the ball a lot. It's hard to imagine that there are a lot of passing yards. Or hard to imagine that you have a lot of passing touchdowns to go around. I mean, the perfect example of this is if you're going over and looking at like the player props on Underdog, right? I mean, you have Courtland Sutton, Michael Pittman right next to each other. You have Michael Pittman at 800 receiving yards and 4 receiving touchdowns, whereas you have Courtland Sutton at 5 receiving touchdowns and 725 passing yards. Like if you're going to go ahead and look at Anthony Richardson with these player props, right now they're projecting Anthony Richardson to have 16 passing touchdowns and 2,700 passing yards. I mean, this is pretty much neck and neck with what they have with Desmond Ridder. So I think this is the primary reason you are seeing Michael Pittman fall down these draft boards. And at this price point, I'm honestly kind of fine taking him. I think that you could go ahead and pull the trigger if you want to. But actually, before we get to our next guy, if you want to check out any of those player props on Underdog Fantasy, or if you want to get in a draft with us, you know we are drafting every single day on this live stream, not taking a single day off until 2024. You can find the link to Underdog both in the comment section as well as the description of this video. It's available in damn near every state. You can see the states here. And if you sign up with promo code FLOCK, you are going to get 100% of your deposit matched. So it's pretty much free for you to check out. Plus, you're going to get our 2023 fantasy football rankings, a free trial to flogfantasy.com. It's best ball, so no time commitment at all during the year. It's how I drafted like 700 teams and won $150,000 on Underdog last year. But now let's go over to Chase Claypool, where I can't really find any news. But Chase Claypool's fallen from pick 190 to 209. So now he's like an 18th round pick. It's like, okay, is Claypool going to get drafted or not? I mean, I think in Underdog drafts, you want to take him in round 18, it's fine. Let me know if you think I'm missing any news here. The only thing I can really find is Chase Claypool going to like a fashion show in Europe and people being like, okay, does this guy care about football? That's the only thing I can find, but let me know if I'm missing something. Now, I also can't find anything with Rasheed Rice. I don't know if this is going back to the point where we were talking about that naturally you see rookies fall down these draft boards as we get further away from the NFL draft because people begin to actually run real projections, and it's hard to project a rookie out for that much production, right? But the most recent reports I can find in KC are like mid-June, where we are having reports saying like Sky Moore's taking a good jump, where, I mean, the 3 wide receiver set right now looks like Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Kadarius Toney, as well as Rasheed Rice. I don't know. I mean, Sky Moore miserably failed last year. I'll dive a little bit deeper into Sky Moore. I'll say, as a prospect, I actually think Sky Moore was a better player coming out of school than Rice was, at least in our wide receiver prospect model. But that's just a game of probabilities, right? Once you get to the NFL and you fail, I mean, it's hard to go through and just go back to that wide receiver prospect model. But right now, if we're going to be looking at where these guys are being drafted, I mean, you have Sky Moore being drafted, I want to say, at a little bit of an expensive price point. He's like the wide receiver 54, 113 ADP. Whereas if you're going to look at Rasheed Rice, he's the wide receiver 65, ADP 145. So I actually really like this price tag on Rice. I'm not a Tony guy. I'm not a Sky Moore guy. I mean, I don't think anybody is an MVS guy. So I feel like it means I kind of have to be on Rasheed Rice. Now, going over to a trio of wide receivers in Carolina, this is where I have to take my massive L. I have drafted a lot of DJ Chark. I have drafted a considerable amount of Adam Thielen, and all three of these Carolina Panthers wide receivers are falling. Jonathan Mingo from pick 129 to 139. DJ Chark from 150 to 157. Adam Thielen 136 to 143. And as you do some research to try to figure out what's going on here, I mean, you can find a report saying, okay, yeah, Adam Thielen looks like he's going to lead this team in receptions this next year. That's just from a beat reporter. Who knows how valid that is? Who knows if we should even be taking that into consideration? Now, the reason these guys are falling is there's more and more smoke of DeAndre Hopkins going to the Carolina Panthers, which is hilarious because back at the end of May, after DeAndre Hopkins was cut, I tweeted out, I have bad news for the fans of the Panthers. We listed them first. Falcons, Bears. DeAndre Hopkins didn't spend 10 years losing in Houston and Arizona to go lose with your team. He's going to a contender. Okay. This just goes to show that I am an idiot. I have no idea what the hell I'm talking about, and you should not listen to me. Now, with that being said, if we're looking at projections for these Carolina Panthers wide receivers right now, DJ Chark is actually at 700 receiving yards on Underdog. I think that this is a wide receiver that has some spike week upside as well. I mean, in general, I really like the price point of DJ Chark. Like, let's look at him versus Tyler Boyd. So Chark is at a line of 700 receiving yards. Tyler Boyd is at a line of 625. So you'd assume that, I mean, are these guys being drafted close together? I mean, how far down is Chark from Boyd? Well, DJ Chark right now is an ADP of 157, wide receiver 69. Whereas if you're looking at Tyler Boyd, he has an ADP of 104, wide receiver 50. If I was going to pick a wide receiver to draft here in Carolina, I'm going to go DJ Chark. I just really like the price point for what you're getting. Now, going over to our next guy, Juju SmithSchuster's falling. And with Juju, I think really the reason we've seen this fall is people being worried about DeAndre Hopkins going over to New England. Because if you remember, a few weeks back, we actually had that smoke where it looked like Hopkins was maybe going to be a New England Patriot. Maybe he still is. But this has had Juju SmithSchuster falling from about pick 101 down to 111. And now it looks like Hopkins is going to Carolina. So maybe you would say Juju SmithSchuster should go back up these draft boards. Now, in reality, I do not think you should be drafting Juju SmithSchuster with where he goes anyway. Because if you're looking at him in underdog drafts, hell, he's being drafted next to David Njoku, Pat Freiermuth, Brian Robinson, A.J. Dillon, Alvin Kamara. I would never draft him at that price point. I'm sorry, I can't take a wide receiver there. And if you're going to be looking like a casual ESPN redraft league, Juju SmithSchuster was like a low-end wide receiver 3 in Kansas City this past year. So if he was like a low-end wide receiver 3 in Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes, what's his real upside? Can this be someone that is a top 15 wide receiver with Mac Jones? Probably not. Maybe he gets some touchdown variability. I just don't see a super high ceiling with Juju. I think maybe he has the floor because there's nobody else to throw the ball to in New England, which maybe makes him a little intriguing in best ball. But from a casual redraft perspective, I just think it makes no sense to take him because he doesn't have the ceiling. Now, DeAndre Hopkins is a wide receiver that has fallen back down to earth. And I think the reason being is when DeAndre Hopkins was cut, a lot of people had the same reaction that I did. A lot of people went, oh my gosh, okay, Hopkins is going to Buffalo. He's going to Kansas City. He's going to be a Jet. Where is this man? We all had, just those rose-colored glasses on. We all were assuming DeAndre Hopkins had a dream landing spot, and maybe I'm just telling myself that, so I'm not as dumb as I really am. But with DeAndre Hopkins, this is a wide receiver that looks more and more likely that landing spot of Kansas City, the Buffalo Bills, the New York Jets does not come true. It looks like the Panthers are very much in play. The Patriots are very much in play as well. And if that is where he decides to go, then all of a sudden you're in a spot where you're probably not too excited about the situation with DeAndre Hopkins this next season. Now, it really depends on the price point that you're getting him at, right? Like if we're going to go ahead and look at these underdog drafts, right now DeAndre Hopkins is the wide receiver 24. He's going right after Jerry Jeudy, Drake London, Terry McLaurin, going right before Mike Williams, DJ Moore, Christian Kirk. In reality, those guys are just pretty much in a massive tier, right? Like it's just, okay, who are you taking there? Blah, blah, blah. Now, if we're going to go over to your casual redraft leagues to figure out where DeAndre Hopkins is going, DeAndre Hopkins is a wide receiver that it's hard to pin down exactly what you should expect. But he's not going to be a pick inside the top 50. And instead, he's actually going at pick 53 in your casual like ESPN drafts. Now there he is going after someone like Christian Watson, Chris Godwin, right before DJ Moore, Mike Evans, Deontay Johnson, Calvin Ridley, Terry McLaurin. He's going well before Jerry Jeudy, which is interesting. But yeah, let me know what y'all think is going to happen with Hopkins here, because I just really wanted to convince myself he's going to KC, and it looks like I am very, very wrong on that front. But yeah, thank you again for checking out this video. I really hope we were able to help you out in some way. I really hope you got something from this. And as always, go down there, drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. And if you want to get in a draft with us in the live stream, which we're doing every single day, you can find that link to Underdog both in the comment section as well as the description. That's also where you can find all those player props. And if you sign up with promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. Plus, you'll get our 2023 fantasy football rankings, a free trial to flogfantasy.com. It's best ball, so no time commitment at all during the year. So I drafted 700 teams and won $150,000 last season. But thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. Really appreciate you, and really hope that we get to see you with the live stream later today.